So if you're someone who's trying to decide between the iPhone 15 Pro Max, the iPhone 15 Pro, and maybe even the iPhone 14 Pro, this video is for you. I've been using the iPhone 15 Pro, the standard 15 Pro, since Friday, since I got it. It's now Monday, and I've been very much debating and thinking about it hard on whether I should be switching to the Pro Max purely for that camera. That really is the main reason why, because I actually prefer the smaller phones. But anyway, we'll get into that sort of stuff later on. Let's go through the differences of these three phones, or the lack of differences really, and sort of help you decide and show what the differences actually are and which one you should be choosing. So of course, the biggest difference between the Pro Max and the Pro is the size. You have a 6.7-inch display on the Pro Max and a 6.1-inch display on the Pro. So yeah, that's obviously the biggest one. You have exactly the same screen on the 14 Pro as the 15 Pro. The resolution is also the same, the pixel density is the same, the brightness is the same, you still have the same ProMotion 120Hz display. So yeah, the screen technology across all three of these phones is exactly the same. The only difference is obviously you get a bigger one on the Pro Max. Of course, the design is a little bit different as well. You have the titanium for the 15 Pros and then the stainless steel for the 14 Pros. Now, that really comes down to personal preference. I think both the titanium and the stainless steel feel incredible. It really does just come down to personal preference. However, the edges around the device are softer on the 15 Pro compared to the 14 Pro. That's something to take into consideration, especially if you're someone who's going to use it caseless. The chip in the 15 Pro has been upgraded as well. You have the A16 in the 14 Pro, and now you have the A17 Pro in the 15 Pro. There's not really going to be a huge difference in performance going from the 14 Pro to the 15 Pro. They're going to feel very similar. Now onto the cameras, where I think the biggest difference is. So the 15 Pro Max has the same 3-camera setup as the 15 Pro and the 14 Pro. The difference is that the telephoto lens, instead of being 3 times like it is on the 15 Pro and the 14 Pro, I feel like I'm going to get these mixed up, but instead of the 3 times, you now have the 5 times, which is equivalent to 120 millimeters. That is it. That is the only difference between the cameras. The cameras actually between the 15 Pro and the 14 Pro are, as far as I can tell, I've tried to look online, I've tried to look at all the information that I can find. As far as I can tell, the cameras on these two phones are exactly the same, which personally for me is actually quite disappointing, because with every generation of iPhone, one of the main reasons why I upgrade from the previous model to the latest one is because I want the latest camera tech in my phone. And it's really surprising to see that this year, Apple haven't really done that much of a difference when it comes to lenses, camera sensors, stuff like that. It's exactly the same. The only difference, of course, like I said, is in the 15 Pro Max, which has that longer focal length. Now, that longer focal length is nice. It means you can get better quality images at a further optical zoom. However, the range between the main camera and now the telephoto is bigger. So if you want to get an image that's maybe 3 or 4 times, it will actually be cropping into the sensor or the picture from the main camera. It's not going to be using the telephoto. Of course, on these two cameras, when you switch to 3 times, it actually uses the 3 times lens. So if anything, when you're shooting at 3 times on the Pro Max, the quality is not going to be as good as the 3 times on the 15 Pro and the 14 Pro. That's something to weigh up. It really depends on whether you see yourself using that 120mm, that 5 times focal length, more than 3 times. I've seen quite a few videos online on Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, of people using the 5 times the 120mm on the 15 Pro Max, and I've been really impressed. Like, I've been thinking to myself, okay, do I switch to the Pro Max? Do I just make the jump, go from the smaller phone to the larger phone, just so I can have that larger camera? I'm still undecided. I still want to test out the two. I want to get out and take pictures with both of the phones and see if I will actually use the 5 times more than I'll use the 3 times. To be honest, for my own personal preference, I usually mainly use the main camera anyway. But like I said, I just want to see. I want to see what they're like, and I want to see if I'll be okay using the larger phone, because from a personal preference, I much prefer smaller devices. It's actually quite a shame to see that they've gotten rid of the Mini pretty much. I much prefer the average, the smaller, the sort of in the middle ground sort of size of devices. They fit in my hand very nicely. It's a lot more comfortable. I can reach all the buttons, no problem. I just prefer this size. And with the Pro Max, you just can't do the same. It's not as easy to reach that button, to reach the action button, to reach the volume buttons, and just to reach the edge of the screen. It's actually quite a struggle, like I have to really move my hand around the device. Obviously, some people have said you sort of just get used to the size, which I can completely understand. I think if I did force myself to switch to the Pro Max, I would get used to the size, but my personal preference has always been the middle ground. I just prefer this size when it comes to phones. When it comes to the differences between the 14 Pro and the 15 Pros, There of course is the USB-C now on the 15 Pros. Now USB-C again really comes down to if you're actually going to use USB-C, if you see yourself using it more. I wirelessly charge most of the time anyway. I rarely actually ever use the port on these devices. However, now that this has USB-C, I could see myself using the USB-C a bit more for connecting up dongles, monitors, SD cards, SSDs, things like that. Because when you want to shoot ProRes log footage, which you can only do on the 15 Pros by the way, you can't do that on the 14 Pro. If you want to get that high quality video, you can shoot it directly to an SSD or an SD card. So you're not taking up storage on your phone. You can have it all on an external media device, which actually makes it easier to put it onto a computer so that you can edit it on there. Yeah, having USB-C, fantastic for that sort of thing. The action button is of course a new addition to the 15 Pros as well. You only get that on the 15 Pros, you don't get that on the 14 Pro. And I'm not going to lie, the action button is incredibly useful just because of how much you can do with it. You can pretty much make it do whatever you like. The sort of possibilities with it are pretty endless, which I'll cover more in my review, because the action button can actually be really, really powerful. However, for my devices, I've simply got it set up so that it's the camera. So when I hold down the action button, it just launches the camera straight away. And I can also take a picture with the action button. So yeah, the action button for me, being able to quickly launch the camera, it really makes a lot of sense because when you're holding it like this, the action button is where your index finger is. So it's like you're using a camera. So it's really nice to have the action button there. And of course I can use it upside down as well and have my thumb on that side instead of the index finger. It makes it easier than having to sort of mess around with the screen, put my thumb on the screen. I feel like you also get a better grip when you're using the camera and using the action button. So really that's it. There are no other differences between these phones. The sort of upgrades, the changes year to year are just getting smaller and smaller, and this year is probably the smallest bunch of updates and upgrades that we've seen for the iPhones. Now, which one should you go for? If you're on a 12 Pro or 13 Pro, then I think it does make sense to upgrade to a 15 Pro. You're going to see a big jump in picture quality, the screen is going to be better, you're going to have USB-C, you're going to see a lot of good changes. However, if you're on a 14 Pro, it is really not worth it upgrading to a 15 Pro. It just isn't worth it whatsoever. And Apple, I think, completely know that. They're not expecting people who have a 14 Pro to upgrade to the 15 Pro because the devices really are so similar. It's absolutely crazy. Nearly everything with these two devices is pretty much exactly the same other than the processor, the action button and the port, and of course the materials. You have titanium instead of stainless steel. But like I said, I think both of these materials are fantastic. And from looking at some videos online, some people are saying that the stainless steel is stronger than the titanium. But yeah, when it comes to sort of strength tests and rigidity tests, I don't really feel like they make a lot of sense. I think most people usually have their phone in a case or something like that. So yeah, for me, I always have my phone in a case anyway, but I have been considering going caseless this year because the titanium really does look stunning. If you're trying to decide between the standard Pro and the Pro Max, the only main difference really is of course the screen size, the battery life, and that camera. If the screen size doesn't matter too much, if the battery life doesn't matter too much, and the camera, you're not really too fussed about taking longer focal length images, you are going to be completely fine with the 15 Pro. Like I said, I'll be using both. I'll cover both in my upcoming review, but I will give this one a try. Even though I don't like the size, I always much prefer the small size, I will give this one a try and try and use that 5x camera to see what photos I can produce with it. So yeah, hopefully that helps you when it comes to choosing which device you should go for. Let me know which one you do go for if you do end up going for the 15 Pro, or maybe you go for the normal 15 or the 14 Pro, whatever it might be. Let me know what color you go for as well. Make sure to check out my unboxing. I did do an unboxing, my first impressions of these devices. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Follow me on Instagram and Twitter and subscribe for more.